In today's video, we're going to be covering service information. A few years ago, I did a video covering 3 service information providers that I use, and I mentioned the DIY versions of those. I didn't show the DIY version, and I probably should have because I got several comments that the DIY version isn't quite what I was showing on the screen. So I purchased subscriptions to the DIY version, and we are going to go over ALLDATA, ProDemand, Identifix, and Emanual online today, and we're going to compare those to the professional version. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with ALLDATA. Now with ALLDATA, I'm already logged in here. This is a professional version. I'm going to go to Repair. We're going to go to 2015 Chevrolet Truck and Suburban. Now we will run into a little hiccup later with Emanual online because they didn't have this service manual, but I already bought the subscriptions on all the other platforms for the 2015. So we'll just we'll look up the same information. It just won't be for quite the same year. So 2015 Chevy Suburban. I'm going to look up a common repair procedure that's a little bigger than the typical DIY would handle without the comfort of having service information. And that's a lifter replacement. The lifters are notorious for failing on these, and it's a pretty big job to do without accurate service information. So up here in the search box, we're going to punch in lifter, and then it's going to break it down for us a little bit by this search. We have system and components, service and repair, parts and labor, testing and inspection. So we want to go to service and repair. If we didn't see what we wanted to see in this box here, you can click show more, and it expands that, and it may be further down. But we're going to go to valve lifter replacement, and it gives us that removal procedure. But as we can see in this picture, they already have this engine taken apart. So up here, step 1 is remove the cylinder head and gasket, refer to cylinder head replacement left and cylinder head replacement right. So we have to click on those, and it'll take us to that part of the manual. But say we want to save this page so we can get back to it later. We can click the little bookmark button. It gives it a title already. We can change that if we want. Hit done. That's going to save this page into our bookmarks for ALLDATA. So let's just click on this link, see what it takes us to. Okay, it takes us right to another procedure of removing the cylinder head. Now there's some stuff here that you may not need help with, but there's a link to it just in case. Drain the cooling system, remove the fuel rail. So each one of these steps you can click, and I'll show you that exact process for doing that job. And then once we get down here, we can remove the head. And then once we get done with this, we can go back to that last page, which we can either hit the back button, or if you've navigated further into the system, we can just go to our bookmark bar up at the top, valve lifter replacement, and now we're back to this part of the procedure. So what if we want to see kind of how long this job's going to take? How big of a job is it? Is it something I really want to do on my own? Or is it something I better take to the mechanic? Now keep in mind, these times are intended for professional mechanics, and doing it DIY, you may have double this time in your repair. On this vehicle, it says for both banks, for the valve lifter replacement, we are looking at 14.4 hours. So it's a pretty big job. So now that I've looked up that information, let me show you the wiring diagrams, because I want to include those just in case they're different in the DIY version. So let's just go back to the home page by clicking Vehicle. I'm going to click Diagram. Now you can also search for the component you're looking for up here, but I just find it easier to go to Vehicle Diagram. And I typically, even if I get deeper into the diagrams, I go back to the home page and start my navigation over if I need to change to a different subsystem. So we have diagnostic aids, exploded views, diagrams, instructions, electrical, interactive color, electrical OE. So the interactive color and the electrical OE, these are the diagrams for the wiring diagrams. All these other ones are component diagrams and everything else. So let's start with the color diagram. We're going to go to Powertrain Management, Engine Controls, and here's our diagram. There's 8 pages of wiring on this vehicle. And we can scroll through, and it's really hard to read these little boxes with the components in it. But if we are to want to zoom in on one of these, we can zoom in with our browser, which is ineffective really, or we can just click on it. When we click on it, it's going to take all of those diagrams and stack them side by side as if we printed them out and taped them together, because these diagrams are continuous from one to the next. The wires run through, and we can just grab this and swipe it over, and you can see the wires go all the way through. Now there's a couple of features that are kind of neat with these wiring diagrams. Let me zoom in. Let's see what component we have right here. Fuel injector number 1. I'm not sure why there's not other fuel injectors with that one, but we'll just go to this multifunction air intake sensor. If we click this box, it'll highlight all the wires attached to that component. Let me zoom back out. It also highlights those wires where they go through all the other pages of the diagram, but it's still kind of muddy with all those other wires. We don't need those wires there. There's a button down here that says hide wires. It just kind of grays out the other wires, and then it's easier to follow where these wires are going. And we can see some come down here to, it looks like a module. Let's zoom back in. And that's what it is. We have the engine control module right here, and we can see where those wires come in. And it also tells us what the connector number is. Now these connector numbers are not interactive. We can't click on them and have them pull up the diagram, but it gives us quite a bit of information. We can always search for that X3 connector in that little search box on the main page. Now you can also view this one page at a time if you want. So down here, this little box is a single view, and it brings in just that one page of the diagram. Let me refresh this to get rid of all the highlighting I did, and now we can just navigate through one page at a time instead of seeing all of those pages together. Now, if we have a diagram that we have to keep going back to, we can bookmark the diagram as well. Or if we want to look up some more information and refer to the diagram during that process, there's a little button here that says open a new tab. It doesn't say that until you hover over it. We can click on that. It's going to open up that single diagram in another tab, and now we can bounce back and forth. We could navigate here. We could look at component information and then come back here and look at our pinout. So that's kind of handy. Go back up to the top. I think that kind of covers it. Oh, we need the OE diagram. So if we want to view the OEM version of this, we don't have to go back to the home page quite that far. There's a little link on the right that says electrical OE, and it'll take us right to that section of diagrams in the OEM side. So engine mechanical schematics and engine controls. We want engine controls. And then the OEM diagrams are a little trickier. They break it down into sections. So we have powers and grounds, serial data, and the check engine light. We have 5-volt reference and the low voltage reference, engine data sensors, pressure, temperature, throttle. So it breaks it down into each section or subsection of that engine control. And if we click on one, it's a very simplified diagram, but it gives us a little more information about what's happening inside the box. So let's zoom in on this engine control module, which is right here. It gives us how the controls are going to happen inside this control box. We see that this wire here is grounded inside the ECM, and we see that these wires are actually connected to a switch inside the ECM, and that switch is connected to a voltage line of some sort. Now, we don't know if this is 12 volts or 5 volts, but we do know that we should have voltage on these wires. Now, oftentimes, if we have voltage up there, it may show an ECM down here, depending on the component, with the low side of that circuit. And it'll go into the ECM and it'll show stuff getting pulled down to ground. These are just grounded onto the engine or something else. We could search for that G140 in the search box. It'll tell us where that's located. And then here we have the ignition coils, and there's all kinds of stuff built into these newer coils because they have the igniter built in. So the spark control is built into the coil itself. And then we show this underhood fuse panel as well. So quite a bit of information there in the OEM diagram that's not in the color diagram, but sometimes the color diagram is just easier to navigate. Now let's jump over to the DIY version. So the main main screen looks a little bit different in the DIY version. Instead of having the repair, the quote, the estimator, or whatever other button I had up there, we just have the DIY. It says we have 27 days left in our subscription. Let's click that DIY button, and it's going to pull up our vehicle selection. Scheduled maintenance. Perfect time to film a video is when they were doing scheduled maintenance. And we just passed that point in time. So it may be a little bit slow, but we'll work through it. Now, I only have options for one vehicle here. 2015 Chevrolet truck, Suburban. We can click that vehicle, and it's going to open our service information. Now, right off the bat, this looks identical to what we saw in the professional version. So I'm just going to run through this super quick and make sure that the information is the same. We're going to look up lifter, valve lifter replacement, shows the procedure. Let's make sure we can do a bookmark. Yes, we can. Can we click and have it link us to another page? Yes, we can. Parts and labor. 14.4 shows the same information. We'll go to vehicle. Look at the wiring diagram. Make sure we have both the color and the OEM diagrams. I have a feeling that this is going to be identical to the professional version. Now, I did see a note on the login page that said if your account was created after June of 2021, then you're going to go to this page to log in. If it was created before that, you go to a different page to log in. So I have a feeling that the old version wasn't this good. It wasn't the same version as the professional version. Yeah, we can still highlight wires. So we can do everything in here that we can do on the professional version. So far I don't see any differences at all. I would say that they're probably the same. Let's make sure we have the OEM. Looks like we do. Yes, we do. So we have OEM diagrams, we have the interactive color diagrams, we have parts, labor, and repair. Now, I think this subscription was $20 for a 30-day. It's much cheaper. The longer you go, you can buy like a full year or a multi-year subscription. So I think that's it. Let's jump into ProDemand. So 2015 Chevrolet Suburban. They should all be the same, so I just clicked in LT, four-wheel drive. And we can do this a couple of ways. Now, I've used ProDemand for years and years and years, and I prefer the long method instead of the search box, but we'll try searching for lifter. Search results for lifter. It's best if you can see what you want to replace over here rather than clicking keyword, because keyword's going to pull up a lot of articles. But this is going to be a little more specific, and it's going to give us better detail. So let's click lifter. Now this is kind of broken down like all data, but this is like a tile version. So instead of having a list with a header, we just click on the tile we want. So we want remove and replace. So OEM, R&R procedures. And the first thing that comes up is valve lifter follower guide. I don't even know why that's called a valve lifter follower guide. I think that's the plunger for the high pressure fuel pump. But we can see up here where it says valve lifter removal. If we click that, it'll bring us further down in that page and give us the information we need. But unfortunately, I run into this quite often. When I go this route, we are missing the thing that says remove the cylinder heads. So we have valve lifter removal right here. And I think that's because we're under valve lifter removal instead of replacement. There we go. Valve lifter replacement. So I probably just clicked the wrong one. Remove cylinder head and gasket. Refer to this. So just like the other program. And that should link us, but we don't have a way of bookmarking where we're at. So that's a little inconvenient, but not a big deal. So let's click this. Takes us to this page. Tells us the steps that we need to do. Matches the other system because they're both pulling OEM information. So that seems about the same. I don't have a quick link to the labor guide here. Let's go back and back. But I should be able to get to it here. Parts and labor. Valve lifters, remove and replace. Gives us the OEM part numbers. Four-wheel drive for all of them is 13.3. So ProDemand is showing a little over an hour less than ALLDATA. If I was quoting out this job, then I would probably use the ALLDATA labor guide because it's a big job, especially if I was quoting for insurance company or extended warranty. Now let's go to our wiring diagrams. I'm going to go back to the home page just to show you where they're at. From the home page, you can find wiring diagrams right here. I still don't normally go this route. I go the old route, which is click this box, go down to service manual, and you can click wiring diagrams right here, or you can go to electrical and wiring diagrams. They're all the same thing, it's just in a different place. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to have OEM wiring diagrams in this. I don't see the OEM wiring diagrams. Let's just click on one of these and see. I think these are just component locations and connector views. And we have system wiring diagrams here, engine performance. And so we have the interactive color wiring diagrams with ProDemand, but I'm not seeing the OEM diagrams. Just like ALLDATA, we can highlight components. So we can click on this, it'll highlight everything, but we can't see these stacked side by side. We just have to scroll through them. But we can also hide wires, just like the other version. We can reset that. We can zoom in. Now, one nice thing about ProDemand that ALLDATA doesn't have is it has a little marker, blue marker here by most of the connectors. So let's just say this X5 connector. We need to know what connector that is because say we have power at this fuse, but we don't have power where this wire connects to our component. Click on the X5. This little box pops over on the side. Component connector. So it says there's several different X5s or several different diagrams that include the X5. Got some thunder going on. So it gives us a picture of that connector and a pinout. Tells us what each pin does. So there's several different connectors called X5. We just have to pick the one we need. So that's kind of nice that they include that component location. Looks like it takes us to the same place, or that's a little bit different. But there's several X5 connectors, so we would have to know exactly which one we're looking for. Okay, let's go back out of there. So that's one of the differences between ALLDATA and ProDemand is sometimes it's easier to jump to a connector view from ProDemand, but at the same time ALLDATA has both the original and the redrawn diagrams. So now that we covered that, let's go to the DIY version. Now, the DIY version is on a different website. So if you just Google Mitchell 1 DIY, it'll take you to this page, which is eautorepair.net. I already purchased a subscription for this vehicle. We can extend it if we want, but we just click on this button here to open up the vehicle. We have repair, service bulletin, maintenance, and estimator. Let's go to repair. And already this is kind of a mess for me. It's hard to read. It's not as easy to navigate as the other systems, and in my mind anyways. I'm just used to the other systems, but let's go to engine. Engine mechanical is what I want. So mechanical. And then engine mechanical again. And now I have a really, really long service manual of information. So not as easy to find specific components. So we could search up here. Let's type in lifter. And it's going to break it down. So engine, mechanical again, 5.3. Let's see if it brings us straight to the lifter section of the manual. And it doesn't. It takes us to the first item that is highlighted by lifter, which is right up here. So I'm going to hit Control F, and I'll just type in valve lifter. And maybe if I searched for that before, it would have taken us to the right place. And I'm just going to keep hitting enter. Holy cow, maybe not. We have 269 places in this service manual where it says valve lifter. Let's try valve lifter replacement. Okay, we're down to 5 different places where valve lifter replacement is mentioned. Now, it's not here. Let's go to next. Valve lifter replacement. Okay. So, step 1, remove the cylinder head and gasket. Refer to this or this. Let's see what happens when we click it. Okay, it takes us straight to that section. Let me go back, see if it brings us back. Okay. We don't have a way of bookmarking it, but at least the links are interactive. Valve lifter guide bolt. So this might open up a diagram. Okay, so the diagrams are not inline images. We have to click on them to open them. Go back. So it's the same information, just a little bit more difficult to navigate in my opinion. But so far it's still the OEM information. I'm just going to hit the home button on my keyboard to go back up to the top of the page. And I just want to go back to the home page here. So next, I guess we talked about the estimator. There's a button up here for the estimator. Engine. I don't know if that's going to be head and valves. Maybe they'll have the valve lifters in there. Cylinder head gasket. Valve and spring, rocker arm, valve cover, valve lifters. Here we go. 4-wheel drive all, 13.3 hours. So the same labor time for that job. It's just a different layout. We have a parts tab. Click on that. It brings us over for the OEM parts. Let's go back to our home page here. Let's do repair. And let's look at the wiring diagrams. So there's a tab right on the home page for diagrams, system diagrams. We'll go down to engine performance. So we have a black and white version of the diagram that is non-interactive. So this is one of the comments that I received, people saying that they can't click on stuff in the diagram, and I see why. This is black and white. You can't click on stuff. There's no links. So that's a little disappointing. But all in all, you get the same information. It's just a little more difficult to navigate. Now, I think the price was the same for Mitchell 1 DIY and All Data DIY. So I think I would go with the one that has the interactive features and go with All Data. Next up is going to be Identifix or Direct Hit. Let's see, 2015 Suburban 5.3. And I'm gonna go faster and faster as we go through this because it's the same information. The method is just slightly different for searching for it. So I typed in lifter. Now, Identifix is going to include their hotline archives. Just punching in lifter brought up all these articles where people have replaced the lifters, and most of them are misfire complaints or noise complaints. But if we go all the way to the bottom, we skip all that and we get to the service manual section. There's a service bulletin section and recalls, component locations, operations, diagnostics, diagrams, repair. So valve lifter follower, I don't see valve lifter replacement. But just like all data, there's more available. It's just not shown on the screen. So we can either hit next for the next 10 or show all. Let's hit show all. It'll expand this list. And now we have valve lifter replacement. Same thing as before. We can click the link. We have interactive service manual here. And all that stuff works. We can use a bookmark if we want. We can expand this So all the data is there, easy to use, just in a different location. Now let's go all the way to the bottom of the screen, parts and labor. Now sometimes there'll be actually two labor guides in Identifix. There'll be the Chilton labor and the motor labor time. This one only has the motor times. Valve lifter. So this should match all data, which it does. 14.4 hours. I know that's a really small font for you guys to read, but the information's there. We have our part numbers. We're all good to go. Now let's jump into our wiring diagram. So I'm going to go back to the home page. Our vehicle should remain selected, and then we can either search for what diagram we want here, or we can click on Service Manual up at the top. Click on Service Manual. We can come down, go to Wiring Diagrams, and we have motor diagrams and color diagrams. So let's see what they bring up. I thought the motor diagram was the color diagram, but I might be mistaken. We want engine controls, and it's broken up kind of weird here. So let's just click on one and see what we get. Some computers, depending on what software you have installed and what plugins you have installed, don't like to load these diagrams. So if they don't, then you might try a different browser and see if that fixes it. So it looks like this is the interactive color diagram. I can click on stuff and it highlights it. I can hide everything else, restore it back to normal, or view it as a set. Oh, let me click that button again. I have to highlight the diagrams I want to be in the set. And then now it's more like what we're seeing with all data. But I can't grab a diagram and swipe it. Instead, I have to click down on my center mouse button to be able to scroll left and right. Or you can come down here and drag this bar to scroll left and right. I do not see interactive links in here to find component locations like we could in ProDemand. So the navigation on this one is a little more like all data. Now let's check out the DIY version of this. I have it open in another browser. Right here. So I purchased the one vehicle, so that's the only thing that shows up. Punch in lifter. We still have the hotline archives. Let's go down. Repair. We have to expand this. So I think this is going to be just like our other one. It looks like it. So all of that is the same between the DIY and the Pro version. Let's see if we have the estimator included. And we do. And last but not least, the wiring diagrams. So that's the service manual, wiring diagrams, color diagram. Oh, I guess in the last one I didn't click on the motor diagram. But it looks like we have the color diagrams. Let's find one, just any one, and make sure that it's interactive, just like what we had before. We want to make sure that all the features are there. Okay, I can do that. I can select more diagrams. So we're not skimped out on anything on the DIY version. Let's see what the motor wire diagrams are. Engine, say fuel controls. Okay, so we have the OEM diagrams as well. So it looks like everything is included in both versions. Now I think all three of those were around $20 for a month, and then some of them you can get like 4-year subscription for $60, which is pretty good deal. Most people probably keep a vehicle around that long. So while you're doing those types of repairs, you can have access to service information. Now, the last one is a little different because there's not a DIY version and a professional version. It's just online manuals. Sometimes it's the OEM and sometimes it's not. I use Emanual online for like my boat motors, my tractor, lawnmowers, generators, stuff that ProDemand or the automotive companies aren't going to have. Emanual Online has them. And I use it most for my boat. I bought a new boat. The first thing I did was jump on here to see if they had a manual. They did. I bought it, and it's already come in handy several times. It's just nice to have that manual for even, changing the oil. So a little more expensive. It was $36, but it's lifetime access. You can download the files. You get an email link that you can download them, and I'll have to find where I saved them to. But you download those files, you can access them for life. You can put them on a jump drive, a CD, save them to your Google Drive, whatever it may be, so that you have access to them later on. Okay, so I went to my download folders and found the folder that all the diagrams are in, or the manual is in. And it's kind of strange, the manual is broken up into a lot of little pieces, so you don't just get the whole manual that you can search through. So we have one folder that says wiring. We'll just start there. It's at the top. We'll go to engine and see what this looks like. I'll maximize the screen, make sure it's on both screens recording, and it is. So we have the color diagrams, but they're not interactive. This is just Adobe highlighting stuff. It's probably printed in blocks. So these were probably printed to file from whatever service they got them from. But they're not interactive for us. Let me see if it's searchable. And it's not. So the titles are searchable, but the fonts and stuff inside the diagram is not. If you have a pro version of Adobe, you can make the diagram searchable. It'll go through and it'll pretty much scan all the text and then add a database to this to make it searchable. But in its base form, it doesn't have that. And I wish it did, because sometimes you just need to look for a certain component and you'd have to go through all these diagrams to find it. So let's go back and let's look up that procedure for the lifters. So I don't see engine repair, I just see engine part 1. So I'm going to click on that and see if that is our engine repair. Okay, it looks like the Mitchell DIY version of the manual. We can see on this bar over here, we just have tons and tons of pages of information. So I'm going to Control F to find, and I'm going to type in valve lifter replacement. So it mentions it here. These are not hyperlinks like the other manuals. It's only in this section twice, and they're right next to each other. Okay, so it did not find it. So that means we need to go to the next part of the manual. Control F. Oops. Valve lifter replacement. Okay, there we go. It takes us to that procedure. So it was in the second group of, or the second file on our engine repair. And it says valve lifter replacement. But it doesn't say that I have to pull the cylinder heads off. So just looking at the diagram, we know that we're going to have to pull the head off, but it doesn't just flat out say it. So scrolling further up, in the service manual right before that is cylinder head R&R. Otherwise, we could search for cylinder head removal up here to get that part of the procedure. Let's close out of that. And I just want to see if there's anything in here that says labor. I'm guessing that they probably don't include labor times. Maintenance and lube. Let me see what that is just to see. Okay, they have fluid capacities, but I don't see fluid types. They get the reset procedure. So it's nice that they have the capacities. I just wish they included the fluid types, because that would make it a whole lot easier. No, I do not see labor times built into here. But at least it's a complete manual. I'll have this manual for the 2015 Suburban forever, even though I don't own one. It's nice to have a diagram that you can just, actually this is for, they didn't have it for the 2015, so I apologize. This is for 07 to 13. On their website, I could not find one for the 2015, so it could have been me just doing a bad job of searching for it, or that vehicle may be too new to have that manual on their site. So I had to click on an older one. I would have done the whole video series with an older vehicle, but I had already paid for the subscriptions for the 2015, so I didn't want to have to pay for those again. So I think that pretty well covers, what they have here, what we can do with the DIY version and the Pro version. Now, I think out of the stuff that we tried today, my personal favorite, if I was going to be, repairing my vehicle, I buy a vehicle, I keep it for 3 or 4 years, I would probably go with the Identifix version, just because it has that hotline archive built in. We have the same interactive diagrams, we have the OEM diagrams, we have the repair information, the labor times. The hotline archives can save you a bunch of time if you have some weird code. But the next one would be All Data. It has everything. It has a community page that's got some information, some hotline stuff, but it's not as thorough as what's on Identifix. I don't know if they haven't been doing it as long, or it's not advertised, or it's not used that way, so it doesn't really get built up and expanded. Mitchell, I was kind of disappointed, and that is what everyone was saying in the comments, is that their diagrams didn't look like mine, and I can see why. I would be disappointed too if I spent $20 and didn't have it as good as I could have. At the same time, it had all the information we needed, other than OEM wiring diagrams. Both the professional and the DIY version did not have the OEM wiring diagrams when using ProDemand or Mitchell. And then we have Emanual online. One price, you buy it, you're good for life. You have the manual. It's a little harder to navigate. You have to search through the manual, multiple pages, non-interactive links, but it's yours forever. So that's kind of the nice thing. Even if you wanted to, if you really wanted to, you can print it out, but that would be a nightmare to put together. But I would personally save it to my computer and save it to a jump drive, or save it to my Google Drive, just to make sure that, in case I lost the email, that I always have access to that information. If you guys have any questions or comments, put those down below. I think we covered everything we needed to. I'll have access to this stuff for less than a month. So if you have any questions, better ask quick, because after that, I'm not going to buy the subscriptions again, just to find out if a feature works. So questions, put those down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, repair diagnostic videos, we do a whole bunch of stuff here, then you're going to want to subscribe, click the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.